Hi, I'm Rebecca Bradley. This is the Virtual Crime Book Club. It is Monday, the 3rd of January, 2022. Happy New Year to everybody. Today we are discussing Snow by John Banville. There will be spoilers, so if you're watching the video rather than engaging in the conversation right now, be aware you might want to read the book before you watch the video, as spoilers will be discussed. So, everybody, have you read the book?
Yep.
Yeah. Managed to read it in time over the festive period?
Didn't finish it.
You didn't finish it, Lynn. So are you okay for spoilers?
I'm not going to try and finish it either.
Right, okay. So first questions first. Did everybody enjoy the book?
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Yeah. No.
No.
There's yeses, a couple of maybes, and a no.
It wasn't really festive, but I enjoyed it.
Okay, we'll go with the yeses first. What did you like about it?
I liked how it was written, the descriptions. So I liked reading it as a novel. As a crime novel, it was rubbish. I thought. But just reading it as a novel, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the writing.
The group wanted a more light-hearted read over Christmas, though. So do you think it fitted that?
No.
It wasn't that it was
definitely
really
not.
light-hearted. It was just so obvious.
Right.
It wasn't very festive. The atmosphere, I like the atmosphere, like the big house and the snow but it was quite dark in general. It wasn't very festive. It wasn't really like a light reading. And yeah, we didn't have that many suspects, but yeah, it was a nice read. I agree. It was more like a nice novel, a historical novel, and yeah, it was good. It wasn't really festive, but it was good.
Yes, from the description, you didn't actually get how dark it was going to be from the description. To say we were after a light-hearted read.
No. It definitely wouldn't have been classified as cozy crime, I don't think.
No.
I made a mistake of happening to see a review of the book before I started it, and just the headline said disgusting book about child abuse, but I tried to ignore that, but it had sort of ruined it. But I loved it was a book of two halves for me. I loved the country house, the setting. The characters were all plucked off a shelf, I felt, the lord, the insular detective, the, wacky daughter. They were all we've seen them all before in lots of other books, but I love the writing. Yeah.
And who else was in two minds about it? Marina, what were your...
Well, again, yes, I thought it was very obvious. I kind of got where it was going from quite early on. I too felt that the characters were a little bit like, okay, this one feels like they've come out of Agatha Christie. This one feels like they've come from, so... and actually with the writing, I felt at times that it was a little bit trying a little bit too hard. It was almost too literary, too convoluted for what the plot was. So I was like, either make it a literary novel or make it a proper crime novel. But yes, I did enjoy the atmosphere, and so, and I did enjoy actually finding out a little bit more about recent Irish history during that period, which I'd never seen it from the point of view of in Ireland, in the Republic of Ireland rather than Northern Ireland. So that was interesting.
Yeah. And Karen, did you want to speak about your thoughts?
Sorry, I agree with Marina that I guessed quite early on what was going to be the underlying topic, and I kept thinking, surely you'll get it soon. yeah, I felt very Agatha Christie to me, which I'm not 100% into anyway. And I felt it was quite slow, but like you say, it was set in a good place. The history was good, but it probably just doesn't suit me as a book.
And Lynn, you didn't like it at all. You didn't finish it.
No, I read three quarters of it. I persevered.
You did quite well then.
Yeah, but I did have to push myself to read it. What I really didn't like, I didn't like any of the characters. I couldn't warm to any of them. None of them said anything to me. They were just people on a page. And if I'm going to read a book, I like to at least like or dislike or have some emotion about at least one of the characters. And I didn't find that at all. I felt it dreary, boring, and no, I didn't like it. I didn't like the writing. I didn't like the setting. And all the things you said, I really just didn't like it. So I think it just, again, it was me. And I didn't find, I still don't know who did it. And I still don't know what, well, I assume now from what you said, but I hadn't even got that far. I hadn't even got as far as deciding about that. And I've been through, I was 3/4 of the way through it. I must be naive or something, I think. But no, I really, and I decided, I said to my husband, sorry, my life's too short to worry about reading something I really don't want to read. So I stopped it and read something else instead. So
I had
sorry.
almost like the reverse experience, because I started it before Christmas. And I was thinking, oh, this not really sure, not this one, I'm not sure this one's for me. And then sort of like I had a break over Christmas because I had so many other bits and pieces going on and whatever. And then last week thought, I'm going to make an effort. I'll pick it up and see if and I actually then got more into it and actually finished it off quite quickly then. And there were bits that I definitely did like about it. I thought I liked the, say I've got, my mother comes from Northern Ireland, or came from Northern Ireland. So I've obviously got a view on Ireland, and it was interesting to read from the perspective of what it was like in the Republic. I also thought the slightly sinister interview that he had with the Archbishop, was it Archbishop? But the senior prelate in the Catholic Church. I thought that was very well done, very well observed, and obviously links in with recent news stories about cover-ups of child abuse in the Catholic Church. And I thought that was well done. The bits that I was kind of less, I thought, well, I'm still, and I really would be very interested to know what people's views were on the interlude where Peggy comes to the the barmaid goes to the inspector on Christmas Eve to essentially have sex with him, and that's his Christmas present. And you think, and I still don't know whether that was, did I miss something? Was that totally gratuitous? Did it need to be in there? I mean, I've got no strong feelings about it. I just thought, I wonder why he's done that. Why? What does this add to the story? And I'm still confused. So if somebody's got an idea they'd like to share, I really would like to hear it.
That's what I felt about the whole book. The whole book, everything I read, I thought, well, where's this going? What does it add to it? And I just didn't know. Who did do it, by the way? Go on, tell me.
That is not said specifically.
No.
It's kind of
implied.
Okay.
Yeah, but it
was a very strange ending, which we will discuss shortly.
Yeah, that's fine. Then I went.
Didn't you think that there's actually a lot more to the book than that? Because you're talking about where Peggy is. Think of the background of the weather. When it's snowing and getting colder, the characters are very far apart. When the snow stops and movement happens, Peggy comes on the scene. His relation with her warms in accordance with the weather. That's what I've got from a lot. And then I thought the interview with the Cardinal was great. And also there's the idea that, of course, this recidivism repeats itself all the time, because the son, the one that was being molested in the house, he then goes on to change religion, goes to the same school, presumably to carry on in exactly the same way as he himself was assaulted. And that's very true in life. I thought it was very observant in that.
That bit I did totally, I totally understand. Yeah, I would agree with that. I thought that bit was well done. But as I say, the bit with Peggy, I'm still, unless it was just because she herself was very young, so it was kind of like, was it to make the point that actually that was considered as sort of like a normal relationship?
Well, I don't know. In Catholic Ireland in the 50s, really? Yeah. I mean,
yeah. I say I don't know. I really
mean, maybe it was supposed to be by way of contrast to, because they kept mentioning the Magdalene laundries and you know, things like that. So maybe a sort of contrast to that. But you know, that surely would have been at the back of any young girl's mind in the era before contraception was readily available.
Yeah.
Well, and that was
sorry. Didn't he illustrate his inadequacy because he never had any firm relationship? His relationship with his girlfriend had gone off on the boil, never got anywhere. She comes along. It's not a loving relationship as such, but again, it goes to nothing at all. I just think there were character pointers to him, and bearing in mind he was an intelligent chief inspector or something, it showed a lot of his weak points as well, and that came out in the story. His relationship with his other officer, the one was killed, also very, very strange. And again, with his superior, I thought these characters, looks in the deeper work, enhanced what he was like. So I think it was important in that respect.
So did you enjoy the book, Norman?
I did, very, very much. I didn't think I would at first. I started reading, this is a load of rubbish and very hard going. But actually, maybe I'm reading a lot into it more than there was, but that's what I got from it. I thought it was very clever in that respect. And the description of the Irish Civil War, as Marina said, that was extremely interesting, seeing it from that viewpoint. It's something I've not come across before, and that alone was worth the read, I think.
Okay, apparently there's this ability that's just popped up that I didn't realise was here. You can raise your hand electronically. Donna's raised her hand. You don't need to do that. Just shout above everybody else.
I'm new, so I thought I'll just be polite. I just find it really interesting listening to you, because when I first started reading it, I thought, oh, this is really interesting. It's going to be a really, really interesting book. And then it just ended up feeling very disjointed to me. Like there was, this bit was about that and this bit was about that. And none of the characters seemed to like each other or care about each other or interact. And I felt it was really heavily signposted what the ending was going to be. So, I mean, I know we're going to discuss that later, but yeah, so for me, I started off thinking I'm going to really love this book. And then about halfway through, I thought, no, I don't think I am. And it was the bit where the girl went to the caravan with Fonzie, with Fonzie, and I was just like, it's like a different person has written this chapter. It didn't flow from the writing of the other chapters. So yeah, from that point on, I was just like, I don't like anyone in this book. I feel sorry for some of them, but I don't actually want to spend time with any of them.
So at the start, we had, I asked who enjoyed it and who didn't. And we've got some that said they did, a couple that were like this, and one that failed to finish reading it. Are you in this camp?
Yeah, I'm in the sort of, it was all right and it was quite interesting. And I did like like someone was saying about the aspects of the Irish Civil War from the Irish Republic of Ireland side, because obviously I've heard more about it from the other side. So I found that really interesting. But I felt like the characters weren't really well drawn out. And yeah, just that caravan scene finished it for me.
I have to agree. I had a real problem with that scene. And and also with the and I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the Christmas Eve also that scene. It was like neither one really worked for me.
But was it not, the caravan scene was obviously just like reinforcing how, because Fonzie had been abused, that he couldn't have a normal sexual life, if you like. Letty, as we sort of said, was all, you know, as somebody mentioned earlier, that in 50s Ireland, there's no way that you were going to sort of be taking unnecessary risks, because even Peggy was asking for condom to be used. I think that what nobody's mentioned is Strafford sort of snogging the wife, whose name is totally gone from me, the little stupid character, the white mouse. You know, why? I mean, I just felt all the characters were real caricatures of where they were supposed to be, from the little white insipid lady, mother of the house sort of idea, to the guy in the pub who had to be told to put his teeth in so you could hear him, you know, you're lower class, so you don't have teeth and we can't understand you, to, you know, your buffoon of the Colonel. They were all caricatures of where of what was maybe Banville was actually trying to portray. I don't know.
Yes, he says that though, doesn't he, himself? He says in the book that each of the characters was as if they walked on the stage at one point.
Exactly. Yeah.
Each person was a different character from a different era, from a different story. From Strafford himself said that, and it was part of his thing. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah, he said that they were just playing like a role. Yeah, I don't know exactly what was his intention, but it's true. He said that all of them look like characters from a play, and they look like a character from the play because they are really stereotypes of certain.
In terms of the
people.
one thing I've got a bit of a question mark over is the character of the Colonel, because given that apparently everybody knew what the priest was up to, certainly from what the other policeman whose son had committed suicide, everyone seemed to know what the police was up to, and yet here he was freely being allowed into a house with an adolescent boy. It kind of reduced. I mean, was the Colonel completely oblivious? And if so, how did he manage to be so completely oblivious when everybody else seemed to be in the know?
There was a short paragraph where Stratford talks about the snow and makes a reference to James Joyce and the fact that it's that people choose to be oblivious,
right? Yeah.
And that they do instinctively know, either instinctively or they have real knowledge of something going on, and they just in their mind compartmentalize and decide that it's not so. And I think that was the role of the Colonel, is that how could he not know his daughter has been expelled from school? And yes, she does pull the letter out of the mail, but how could he be oblivious to what was going on there? And his first wife, his second wife, it was pretty amazing. So that was one of the things I think that was with the whole book. It's all of these people are just, pretending, and the Cardinal in the police, well, it'll just be an accidental death and this is the way it is. And for me, the most difficult character was Stratford, because yes, he kisses the white mouse. He sort of lusts in his mind after the daughter. And then at the end of the book, it turns out he went back to his girlfriend, Marguerite, married her, and now is separated from her. And it's like nobody in the story got their act together. It was really unsettling, but not in a good way, that there was no resolution to any, including, who did the murder.
The novel's set in the 1950s. How much of an impact do you think that had on the characters, the police investigation, and the storytelling? Do you think it had an impact on any of those things? Do you think it would have been different if it had been set in current day?
For me, the investigation was clearly that. I thought I kept reading it with a 20th century mind, thinking about the way profiling has gone forwards, what we know about the priests and child abuse and stuff, because it was quite obvious at the beginning moment you had the mutilation of the priest, where this was going. And but the inspector didn't follow that path, and I was like, why is he not following that path? And I kept asking myself, is it because it's set in the 50s? Do they have this knowledge back then? They might have it a bit, and he follows his detective's nose, but did they have all the information that we have? So I'm reading it with my mind, but thinking, I kept saying to myself, it's in the 50s, Craig, so maybe they don't have that information, and maybe that's why I see it so obvious, but the detective hasn't followed it. And I was trying to use that constantly throughout when I was reading the book. But I was one of those, But I liked the character. I thought I would like to learn more about the detective inspector. I thought he could have been a really complex character, but I did like him when he was with the cardinal. I thought that was probably to me his best character, when he was biting back at him. I thought that was great. But apart from that, no, I was reading it with my mind, but I was trying to think, hold on, this is in the 50s, Craig. This is in the 50s.
What I found tricky about this is that in my history, nobody knew what the priests were doing until it was just blew up. So I found that there was way too many people in the book, from my memory of growing up Catholic, of people knowing what the priests were up to. We had no idea. That was a big shock. Yet in the book, there seemed like a lot of people knew. They didn't say anything, but they knew. I found that odd.
Would anyone really challenge a priest in those days? I mean, the Catholic Church in Ireland in that time was all pervasive, and if anyone raised anything, they tried to suppress it. If they couldn't suppress it, they just moved the priest onto a different area altogether for him to carry on like that. And then you were saying about the colonel, his whole attitude towards his whole family was weird. I don't think he cared. He was using the priest for a lot of payment for the keeping of the horse. He was actually getting money from him. And I just don't think he had any care whatsoever for members of his family, with the daughter, with anyone, a very dysfunctional lot. And I just think he showed a blind eye, which in fact is what happens in a lot of these type of cases when it's taking place within the same family. People do turn a deliberate blind eye, and he was just profiting from the priest. He was getting money from it. The priest was getting entry to the house. He was happy. Most bizarre circumstances, but I thought that was well illustrated.
I think it had to be in the 1950s because like there was a lot of silence that you wouldn't get now. So people were isolated. They couldn't just go and find a quick solution to something. You know, the snow was blocking everyone in. So they were like literally and figuratively cut off from the outside. So I think the 1950s aspect of it was actually a bit that I enjoyed in the book. I felt it was really important to have that part. And also, you know, when we're talking about the characters, like if we look at the wife, you know, the white mouse, she was this white mouse, but there's this suggestion that maybe she killed the first wife. And, you know, the implication is she's having some sort of thing with the doctor. She tried it on with the policeman, you know, so she's got this facade. So there seem to be a lot of people who have almost like a sort of public persona and then a real one that they're not showing to anyone. So I did wonder if like all the thing about the snow was like that, you know, that everything was being covered up and hidden. But yeah, I liked the 50s aspect of it, and I think it wouldn't have worked in modern times because they would just have picked up the phone and resolved stuff. You know, I think it had to be in the 50s.
And the techniques, the investigative techniques will be very different. So yeah, this would only work if it's in the 50s because they have almost no training and they only like do some fingerprint analysis and that's it. Even the interviews he does, because everybody that was at home should be a suspect, but it's like having dinner with them and having these little chats. So yeah, it only works if it's in the 50s. If it would be today, it would be very different. But I like this aspect. I enjoyed the book, but I read the book more like a novel and less like a crime novel. So the crime aspect didn't interest that much. It was more like, okay, it's a novel, and certain things happen because it's a novel. And it does a lot with a plot that is not that dynamic, because in terms of the crime, nothing much happens. So at the end, it tries to develop the story in different ways. So I read it more like a novel.
Although interestingly enough, he's got another one planned, I think, because according to my copy, there's one coming out. I didn't read it, but there's a section on the next book which features him. I think it's going to be called April in Spain.
Yes, I think it's part of a series.
Yeah, so he's obviously got, going to develop it. I say, not entirely sure I'll be reading April in Spain, but it's.
And of course, he has written crime fiction before as Benjamin Black, hasn't he? So this is the first one that he's writing under his own name, which made me wonder if, because I think I've read one or two Benjamin Black ones, and they felt more crimey. This one felt more literary fiction. So I wonder if that's why he kind of gave this one his real name, because it's kind of straddling the two genres.
So do you want to discuss the ending? What did you make of how it was wrapped up, the fact that they just jumped 10 years and then discussed it? It was an info dump as such. How did you feel about the way it ended?
For me, I quite liked it because it tidied a lot up, and it gave me it sort of joined the dots that I hadn't quite joined up. But yeah, it was, I don't know, it was good in one respect, but it was just throwing that other element in there of the daughter, and it was like, oh my God, just throwing that element in there. Whereas I had most of it sewn up anyway with Fonzie and co.
Yeah. I think that it did. At first, I thought, oh, he's just throwing it in as a final twist. But then I think actually, when I thought about it more, I thought, well, it makes more sense of the scene in the caravan that the daughter and Fonzie had some form of relationship. So I sort of thought it did, as you say, tied up some loose ends. And I suppose it was probably better than just leaving it hanging at the end of 1957 or whenever it was. So yeah, probably worked for me.
I think it made all the sense, because I don't think Fonzie will be capable of planning the murder, like go in, break the lamp, know that the priest was coming out of the room of her brother. So I think it made sense that she was involved. She was probably the one that instigated the crime and made Fonzie come to the house, because she obviously was the dominant one in that relationship. So for me, it made all the sense that she was involved. I don't think Fonzie would have done it by himself in that way. He could do it like by impulse or something, but not like in a planned way, because this was planned. They broke the lamp, and okay, it was planned. So at the end, for me, yeah, it wrapped up very, very nicely.
I mean, we've been told that Fonzie couldn't kill, he couldn't cope with, being a butcher's apprentice and, and being involved in the actual near death of the animals and things. So, and that he would only do it for necessity. So I think right from the caravan scene, I had Letty down as being the one who had actually did the murder for him, and he just did the butchering afterwards. That had been my take on it, from that early on. So yeah, having that end bit, I think, was just, as you say, it was the info dump to let tie up the characters, and as you say, to sort of with the Dominic character, to show that these things just perpetuate themselves.
I think that was the point of it, was, when I was reading the end, and what was she calling herself at the end? Laura or something? Laura. So she was going to marry the boy who had tried to attack her. twice, you know, and it just seemed like, for me, the thing I found quite interesting about it was, even though she's now an adult, there's just this acceptance of this behavior, and it to me, it was saying, you know, it's all just going to keep on going. So I found it quite interesting, and it was interesting to see what happened to Strafford, and that, you know, he went back, he married Marguerite, but he seemed to me such a half-hearted character, like he couldn't even make that work, you know. It just all drifted off, and then were they separated? He didn't know, maybe they were, you know. It would be, he would just go with it, whatever. So yeah, I found him very odd. So the 10 years later was interesting to me, because he seemed to have not changed at all, whereas Laura seemed to have accepted things. And yeah, but yeah, you're right, it was sort of like, now I'm going to explain the plot to you and explain exactly what happened.
I think that's the bit I liked least, because it felt to me like, I don't know if any of you remember old black and white movies when you had the epilogue, and that sort of told you all the bits you might not have been able to work out yourself. And it was, I love your phrase, info dump. I hadn't come across that, and that is just what it was. It was, you know, I'll tell you what actually happened. So, yeah.
But Strafford wasn't a very good police officer anyway. I mean, one of the prime people I would have thought he would have questioned was Mrs. Duffy. She cleaned up the blood, and marvelous cleaner. She did all that, and made the indifferent food and so forth. But he didn't even question her. She didn't come into it, and she must have had a lot of information. So in that respect, it was a little bit suspect, but still an enjoyable read, I thought.
Yeah.
I think
why was Jenkins killed?
I don't know. I didn't work that out.
I think it was because he discovered the genitals
in the
caravan. The genitals were inside the whiskey glass.
Mm-hmm.
The whiskey glass was found at Fonzie's caravan with the genitals inside. And I think Jenkins went there just to, I don't know, speak with Fonzie or something. And they saw this. And then probably Fonzie just walked him, just beat him in his head. That's what I understood. That he saw that, so obviously he became suspicious, and Fonzie had to kill them, but more like a self-defense mechanism. I don't know.
There was so much there that needed following up, I thought, because Jenkins went to the house to interview, and I correct me if I'm wrong, didn't he speak to Mrs. Duffy and then rushed off, and that's the last he was ever seen? He obviously
it was like Jenkins was there and then he wasn't.
Yeah. And it was like, I kept almost screaming at the book saying, talk to Mrs. Duffy, Jesus, find out why he's disappeared. What did they say to each other?
Well, usually a murdered police officer is a big dramatic deal in a crime book.
Yeah.
And it was nothing in this book.
Did you like it?
Me?
You?
I listened on audiobook, and I listened with half an ear because it wasn't my kind of book, which is why I kind of said who killed Jenkins, because I kind of missed the genitals in the teacup.
Didn't even know Jenkins had been killed.
Whiskey glass, the whiskey glass.
Whiskey glass.
Because the priest was drinking the whiskey, and then I think it was a whiskey glass. I think
you were paying far more attention than I was.
I think I
kept
read
on
already
saying
a couple of books after this one, so sometimes everything gets.
Well, no, but they kept on saying, if the priest had some whiskey, where was his whiskey glass?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yes. And then obviously it was that Fonzie had taken it away, and
they use it to put the genitals really good.
As you would, you're thinking, where am I going to put them?
Oh, in the whiskey glass.
I'll pop them in this glass. That'll be nice. I mean, I think for me, the most successful part of the book was also the most unpleasant part, which was when the priest was talking about his time at the school. And it was kind of like an insight into how people like that actually think. And, you know, he was aware he was causing Ginger immense pain and getting the other boys to beat him up to keep him in line so that he didn't complain and everything. But he, you know, he was justifying it to himself and saying, you know, he cries all the time, but I think maybe he likes it, you know. So I found it
extremely disturbing.
It was horrible, but I think actually that was, in terms of writing,
Yes.
You know, he got really into that character.
To me,
I don't read anymore.
that was the worst part of the book to me, the graphic explanation. Yeah. I didn't think that was needed at all. I thought it would have been better to learn about the hurt that was done to the characters, so to understand the characters and how they felt afterwards, rather than that explanation. To me, that was just like, I didn't like that at all, and I thought that shouldn't have been there. But yeah, it was.
That part I think that was a very necessary part of the book. You know, we've had so many books about child abuse, and I've said before, I really don't like this, and it was obvious from the very beginning, Catholic priest castrated, this was going to be about child abuse. And so I think to get it from that different angle and to see how it was normalized, because that's what the priest was doing. He did it because Ginger, you know, he knew that it was love and Ginger liked it, and you know, it was all normalized. And this is what was so horrific about it.
But it was the descriptive element which I didn't like. I thought
it made me squirm.
Yeah.
What I didn't
that really was the point. You know, it was to arouse an emotion, to make you realize how
there was no way of knowing from the blurb what this book was about at all, and something like that could have been very difficult for a reader.
Well, I think right at the very beginning, when you're told it's a Catholic priest that's being castrated, is that didn't flag up lots of warning signs. I don't know what would.
I'm sorry, I
didn't understand about. But I didn't understand.
I really must be naive. It didn't occur to me. I'm like, oh God, I must be so thick.
I thought that maybe he was having an affair and the wife killed him, because in the very beginning, because I thought, well, that would be a good thing to do to somebody if he cheated on her. I thought maybe he and the wife were fooling around, and she took out, and she was the one that killed her friend, you know, and then of course it became obvious that wasn't it. But in the beginning, I didn't think that.
No, I thought we were child abuse.
I was thinking affair.
I have a question. I'm sorry about the explanation of the priest. That was a diary, and I was really disturbed by that part of the writing. And was that diary only for our knowledge, or did Stratford have it? So the author just threw it in so that that was strange. In addition, because it's sort of like all of a sudden I'm starting to read this diary. Did I miss something? Did Stratford find this, or did this come up later, or what happened? So we don't know if that diary was ever discovered by another party, or
it would have been so much better if he pursued, when he met the sister of the priest and she mentioned that he was at the juvenile centre, it would have been so much better if he pursued that role, and that's where all that information would have come up, rather than just dumping this descriptive element in the middle of it of child abuse.
I do agree with Donna, though, that it was well written, because that's why we squirmed.
Yeah, and I think, you know, from my point of view, when I was reading it, I was thinking, this is a really horrible thing to be reading. And, you know, you're reading it in disbelief and thinking, how can he even think any of this? And, you know, and then you're reading about his own history with his dad coming in, and how, you know, he was saying he wouldn't do certain things because he didn't want Ginger to be scared, like he'd been, you know, although obviously attacking him and abusing him, he seemed to think was fine. So for me, I thought it was really well written in terms of giving you a viewpoint that I didn't want to have. But I have to say, when Fonzie started talking about how he'd been, or someone said Fonzie had been sent to a boys' reformatory, I thought, oh yeah, okay, something really bad happened there, and that's what it's going to be. So
it was, for me, it was very much, again, like the end bit. It just seemed that it wasn't woven into the story in any way. It was just this separate bit in the middle that sort of said, now I'm going to tell you why it's all happening. And I'm not sure, I felt really uncomfortable, because it was the story of horrendous abuse just told by the perpetrator. And I didn't get from the book that much of sort of the victim's side of it, other than they were just left to sort of maybe reproduce this and yeah.
I think that was the point. I think in the priest's mind, you know, he was as much a victim as anyone else, and like there were no victims, and he was doing this with these boys who loved him, and you know, like justify, and I didn't like reading it, you know, and I wouldn't choose. You know, at the start I thought it's going to be a country house murder mystery, the butler did it sort of thing, and quite quickly I thought, no, actually there's going to be something really horrible has happened.
If you actually read the synopsis on the back, I've just done so, the synopsis on the back of the paperback, or the any of the reviews, there's absolutely no clue there of the subject of the subject matter. I mean, so if you were giving it to say your mother-in-law or your granny, under the impression it's like an Agatha Christie, they could be in for a bit of a nasty shock.
So if they are Catholics, this is.
Yes, it wasn't the light-hearted read everybody wanted over.
Well, do you know, I was reading the thing and it said you'd chosen a light-hearted read, and then I was reading it and I was thinking, what do they normally read? If this is like,
I think all the others that were up for a vote were really light. This one was the one that was really serious, but
I didn't choose it.
No,
is
me
it like
neither.
when I was in the library and there was a little old lady next to me and she had 50 Shades of Grey and she said to the librarian, will I like this book? And the librarian said, yes, it's a really nice love story. You know, so different people have different viewpoints.
They do. So will anybody be reading the next John Strafford book?
I doubt it.
No.
Definitely not.
I don't know. I enjoyed this one, but I don't know. I have so many books to read now.
Yeah.
My life.
Roman, will you be picking it up?
No, I enjoyed it, but not that much.
Not that much. Okay.